She signed a contract without reading. And now she belongs to the billionaire CEO forever. She thought it was just another stack of papers, a simple contract, a few signatures, enough money to save her sister's life. But the moment Lila signed her name, she gave away more than she realized. She gave away her freedom. Now she belongs to him, the billionaire CEO who always gets what he wants. But what happens when the man who owns her future starts to fall for the woman he never meant to need? Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Lila Montgomery stood outside the towering glass building, clutching a slim folder to her chest, her breath caught between excitement and panic. Her emerald green eyes darted up at the sharp Sterling Corp logo glittering above the revolving doors. She could almost hear her mother's voice from years ago. "Always read before you sign anything, sweetheart." But today was different. She was 25, broke and desperate. Inside that folder was her last chance to keep her life from falling apart. The contract she'd just signed, 5 neat signatures on 10 unread pages. She had no idea what she'd agreed to. All she knew was that it came with a paycheck large enough to cover her sister's surgery. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. But then the elevator doors opened, and everything changed. He stepped out. Dominic Sterling, the man behind Sterling Corp., didn't just walk into a room. He owned it. He was tall, calm, dressed in a champagne gold-tailored suit that shimmered under the hallway lights like it had been stitched from power itself. His hazel brown eyes scanned the lobby until they locked onto her. And then he smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. It was knowing. Intentional, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Miss Montgomery," he said, his voice low and smooth, "I see you signed the contract." Lila's breath caught. "Yes? Is something wrong?" "Not at all," Dominic replied, stepping closer. He didn't break eye contact, and it made her feel like he could see every crack in her soul. "You've just agreed to become my fiancée." The words hit her like a truck. "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "That's not possible." "I signed a temporary assistant contract. The agency—" He cut her off. "You didn't read the fine print." She blinked. The folder trembled in her hands. Dominic turned and gestured for her to follow. "Come, we have a press conference in 20 minutes. The media's already waiting." She didn't move. "This has to be some kind of mistake." He turned back to her, his gaze sharper now. "You signed a legally binding contract. Page 7, Clause 14. Temporary personal engagement to CEO as fiancé. Non-negotiable for the full term of agreement." Lila's stomach dropped. She had flipped through it, scanned for anything suspicious, but she hadn't read it. Not really. She needed the money. The agency said it was admin work. Now she was apparently engaged to him. "This is insane," she breathed. "Not insane," Dominic said calmly. "Strategic. You were selected for a reason." She stared at him, stunned. "I don't even know you." "You will." His words felt like a promise, or a threat, maybe both. She followed him numbly through the wide hall. Her heels echoed on the marble floor. Her mind raced. Fake engagement. For how long? Why? What kind of billionaire pulls this kind of stunt? As they entered the private elevator, he pressed the button for the 38th floor. Silence filled the space between them. Lila could feel his presence. Calm, composed, a man used to getting what he wanted. But there was something else, too. A tension behind his eyes, like this wasn't easy for him either. "Why me?" she asked, finally breaking the silence. He glanced at her, his jaw tightening. "Because you were the only one who didn't ask questions." That stung more than she expected. "Is this for publicity?" she asked. "Are you hiding something?" He gave a bitter half-smile. "Everyone's hiding something. The elevator doors opened to a luxurious conference room flooded with natural light. Cameras, reporters, and a dozen employees bustled around. Lila blinked as the noise and lights overwhelmed her senses. Then someone handed her a small mic. Dominic turned to her. "From this moment on, you're Lila Sterling, my bride-to-be. Just smile and stand beside me. Do that, and your sister's medical bills vanish by next week." She froze. "How do you know about my sister?" He didn't answer. A flash of panic hit her chest. Her life wasn't private anymore. He dug into it, used it, but she stood tall. Her heart was racing, but her voice stayed even. "And what happens if I walk away?" Dominic's eyes darkened. "Then you'll face breach of contract, lawsuits, and your sister, well, she'll be waiting for surgery a long, long time." The door opened. A coordinator peeked in. "They're ready for you two." He offered her his arm. "Shall we, fiancée?" Lila stared at him, a man she didn't know, a life she hadn't agreed to, and a decision that wasn't really a choice at all. She slipped her arm through his. They stepped onto the stage, flashbulbs exploding around them, cameras rolled, people cheered. And Lila Montgomery smiled, not because she was happy, but because she knew the moment those cameras turned off, her real life, the one she no longer controlled, was just about to begin. Lila didn't remember smiling, but the pictures said otherwise. That night, she sat alone in the guest suite of Dominic Sterling's penthouse, a space too perfect to feel lived in, like it belonged in a luxury magazine instead of someone's real life. The room smelled faintly of expensive cologne and fresh orchids, like everything here had been carefully chosen, and sterilized of anything human. Her satin emerald dress clung to her skin, still creased from the press conference hours earlier. On the sleek coffee table in front of her lay a stack of newspapers and magazines, all with variations of the same headline. Billionaire Bachelor, Dominic Sterling, engaged to mystery woman. From nobody to Mrs. Sterling? Sterling's surprise fiancé stuns in green. Lila's own face stared back at her from a dozen angles, laughing, smiling, gazing up at Dominic with eyes full of affection, except none of it had been real. She picked up one of the covers and studied it. Her smile was perfect, poised. She looked like she belonged in his world. But that woman wasn't her. That woman didn't have student debt, a waitress job she'd just lost, or a sister waiting on a hospital bed for surgery they couldn't afford. Her stomach turned. She tossed the magazine down and leaned back into the couch, overwhelmed. How did she end up here? A quiet knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She sat up straight as it creaked open. Dominic stepped inside, no longer wearing the gold suit that screamed CEO. He was barefoot in black slacks and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. His hair was slightly tousled now. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man trying not to fall apart. "I thought you might want this," he said. Holding out a glass of water, she hesitated, then took it. "Thanks." He didn't sit, just stood near the edge of the couch, watching her carefully. She hated how calm he always seemed, like none of this could touch him. "You did well today," he said. "Better than I expected." Lila let out a bitter laugh. "So I make a convincing liar. Congratulations to both of us." He didn't flinch. "You looked confident." I was terrified. "I know." That surprised her. She expected him to brush it off, to pretend none of it mattered. But his tone had softened. He wasn't mocking her, not tonight. "I'm not cut out for this," she said, rubbing her temple. "All those cameras, the questions, the lies, this isn't me." Dominic tilted his head slightly. "It's not forever." She shot him a sharp look. "That's easy for you to say. This isn't your face all over the internet being dissected by strangers. It's not your family being dragged into gossip articles." He paused. "I looked into you, yes, but your sister's medical files are sealed. No one outside my legal team knows." That doesn't make it okay, she snapped. You used her to force my hand. That's not business. That's cruel. A flicker of something passed over his expression. Guilt, maybe even shame. I did what I had to, he said quietly. You weren't the only one with something to lose, she folded her arms. Then, tell me, why a fake engagement? Why me? Dominic took a slow breath and finally sat on the edge of the armchair opposite her. The board wants me out, he said. They think I'm too young, too unpredictable. The image of a lone, reckless billionaire isn't great for shareholder confidence. So, you need a fiancé to make them think you're stable? Lila blinked, struggling to believe it. She buys me time, he replied. 3 months. That's all I need to finalize a deal I've been chasing for over a year. After that, I walk away on my terms. And you couldn't just, I don't know, date someone like a normal person? She asked. Dominic's lips curled slightly. Normal doesn't work in my world. People fake affection all the time. At least with you, the contract is honest. She stared at him, confused. You think this is honest? It's transactional, he said. We both get something out of it. You help me buy time, and I'll make sure your sister gets the best care in the country. I keep my company. You keep your family. Lila stood, tension bubbling in her chest. You act like this is some fair deal, but it's not. I signed under pressure. I didn't choose this. Dominic looked up at her. Eyes suddenly serious. You could have walked away. Could I? She asked bitterly. You found my weakest point and put a price tag on it. He didn't deny it, but instead of arguing, he stood too, a little slower, a little quieter than before. Something in him seemed heavier. You're right, he said. You didn't choose this, and I'm sorry. The apology caught her off guard, not just because it came from him, but because it sounded real. She studied him closely now, the man behind the billion-dollar headlines. His stubble was a little uneven, his eyes a little too tired. There was a crack in the armor, and for the first time she saw it. So why me? She asked again, softer this time. Why not someone else? Dominic held her gaze. Because you were the only one who didn't chase me. Everyone else came with an agenda. You came with desperation, but you still had pride. Silence settled between them. And maybe it was the way he said it, or the way his voice lowered when he talked about time running out, but something shifted inside her, just slightly. She didn't trust him, not yet, maybe not ever. But part of her started to understand him, the pressure, the loneliness, the constant performance. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Tomorrow night, we're having dinner with my mother, he said. She thinks the engagement is real. Don't tell her otherwise. Lila blinked. Your mother? She's sick, he said, and she still believes in fairy tales. Before she could ask what that meant, he disappeared down the hall. And for the first time since this whirlwind began, Lila realized this wasn't just about business. It was personal, deeply personal. And whatever secrets Dominic Sterling was hiding, they weren't going to stay hidden for long. The next evening, Lila stood in front of the full-length mirror in the guest suite, staring at her reflection like she was about to meet royalty, not a sick, aging woman who still believed in fairy tales. Dominic had a tailor deliver several dresses earlier that morning, each more expensive than the next. She hated that she had to choose one. Hated that wearing it made her feel like she was playing into the fantasy. But still, she wore the navy silk gown that fell just below the knees, simple yet elegant. Something about it made her feel grounded. Maybe it was the soft weight of the fabric, or maybe it was the memory of Dominic's voice last night, low and sincere. She thinks the engagement is real. Don't tell her otherwise. She had a million questions. Why lie to his mother? Why choose her of all people to keep up this charade? And what kind of son lies to someone who's ill? But she already knew the answer. Control. Image. Power. For people like Dominic Sterling, the truth was never just the truth. It was a tool, a currency, a choice. Still, something about the way he'd said it. There was a crack in his voice he hadn't meant to show. Now, as the elevator took her up to the top floor, the private penthouse suite where his mother lived when visiting the city, Lila found herself oddly nervous. The doors opened with a soft chime. Dominic was already waiting for her. This time in a deep charcoal suit, no tie, his hair perfectly styled, every inch of him polished to perfection. Except his eyes. They were darker tonight. Unreadable. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. Lila hesitated, then took it. "You clean up okay, too." He gave a soft smirk, but said nothing. Together they walked into a softly lit dining room where the city lights glowed through floor-to-ceiling windows. A long table stretched across the room, but only one other person sat at it. A woman with silver-streaked hair, a silk shawl draped around her thin shoulders. She turned with a smile the moment she saw them. "Dominic," she said, her voice warm but frail, "and this must be her." Lila stepped forward, and for a moment she forgot the script. The woman's eyes were kind, tired, yes, but kind in a way Lila hadn't expected from someone in Dominic's world. "It's so lovely to meet you, Mrs. Sterling," Lila said politely. "Oh, call me Elise," the woman said, waving a hand. "We're practically family now, aren't we?" Dominic sat beside her. Lila took the seat across. A private chef entered briefly to pour wine and serve the first course, delicate plates of grilled vegetables and truffle soup. All of it looked too beautiful to touch. "You're even more stunning than the photos," Elise said, studying Lila with gentle curiosity. "But there's something else in your eyes, a sadness. I recognize it." Lila blinked, startled. She lost her father young," Dominic cut in smoothly, "and she's been taking care of her sister ever since." Elise nodded slowly. "That explains it. You carry responsibility like someone twice your age." Lila glanced at Dominic. How did he know that? She never told him about her father or how she'd practically raised Emma since their mom walked out. But he spoke it like fact, as if he'd read her whole life like a dossier. "Dominic was the same," Elise continued, "always too serious, always working. Even when he was a boy, his father wanted him to be perfect." Dominic's expression didn't change, but his grip on the wine glass tightened just slightly. "He didn't get much of a childhood," Elise added with a sad smile. "That's why I prayed that when he fell in love, it would be with someone who could remind him what life feels like, not just numbers and contracts." The silence that followed was heavy. Lila didn't know what to say, so she just smiled softly. "He works hard, but I think there's more to him than he lets people see." Dominic looked at her then, not with arrogance or challenge, but with something else, something almost grateful. Elise beamed. "I knew it the moment I saw the announcement. You'll bring him back to the real world." If only she knew. After dinner, Elise excused herself to rest, leaving Dominic and Lila alone by the balcony. The air was cooler here, quieter. The stars above the city were faint, but present. "She's lovely," Lila said. "She doesn't have much time left," Dominic replied quietly. Lila's heart sank. "I'm sorry." "She's the reason I built this company," he continued. "I wanted to prove something. To my father, to her, to myself." "You don't owe anyone proof of who you are." He let out a bitter laugh. "Don't I?" She looked up at him, the city lights casting a soft gold glow on his face. He looked less like a CEO now and more like a boy trying to outrun the shadow of a father he never mentions. "This thing between us," she said, hesitating, "it started as a lie. But if you're going to drag me into your life like this, I deserve the truth." He turned to her. "What truth?" "Everything," she said. "No more performances when we're alone. Just honesty. That's the only way I can survive this." He nodded slowly. "Deal." They stood in silence again, the the city humming below them. For a moment it felt almost real. Then Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire posture changed. "What is it?" Lila asked. He looked up, his expression unreadable again. "There's been a leak," he said. "Someone sent the press a copy of our contract." "There's been a leak," Dominic said, staring at his phone screen like it might explode. "Someone sent the press a copy of our contract." Lila's stomach dropped. "What?" Her voice came out sharp, cold. "The contract? The fake engagement contract?" Dominic's eyes didn't leave the screen. "Yes, it's already online. At least 2 gossip sites have posted screenshots. It's spreading fast." She backed away from him, heart pounding. "You said this would be controlled, quiet, just between your team and me. How could this happen?" "I don't know," he muttered, jaw clenched. "This was locked down, NDA protected. The only people with access are legal, HR, and—" He stopped. "And?" Lila pushed. "And me." A silence dropped between them like a wall. "You think I did this?" she asked, stunned. "You think I leaked the contract?" "I didn't say that," he replied too quickly. "You didn't have to." Her chest tightened with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You dragged me into this, put my face all over the internet, made me lie to your dying mother, and now you think I'd sabotage myself? Are you serious?" Dominic looked at her, then fully, clearly. And something shifted in his expression. "I don't know who to trust anymore," he said, voice low. "That's what this world does to you." Lila stepped forward. "I'm not this world, Dominic. I didn't grow up in a mansion. I didn't build walls so high I couldn't see anyone else. I signed that contract to save my sister's life. You think I'd risk everything now?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're right. I'm sorry." But the apology didn't soften her, not this time, because now the lie wasn't just between them. The world knew, and if people saw the contract, if they read the cold, transactional language in black and white, the entire story would unravel. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Dominic turned toward the balcony door, watching the lights of the city flicker below like embers. "My lawyers will try to contain it, issue takedown notices, threaten lawsuits. But once something hits the internet, it never really disappears. So the engagement will be questioned," he said. "Every headline, every photo of us, every smile, they'll say it was fake." Lila shook her head, pacing now. "What does this mean for me? I already have reporters showing up at my sister's hospital room. My inbox is full of threats and creepy messages. What happens when they start calling me a fraud?" Dominic turned back to her, his voice quiet but firm. "I won't let them touch you." She looked at him, eyes burning. "They already have." For the first time, he looked unsteady, like the walls around him were cracking just a little too fast. "I'll double security," he said. "Move your sister to a private facility. We'll tighten media control." "None of that fixes the damage," she snapped. "People think I tricked you into this, that I'm some gold digger who used a sick family member to manipulate a billionaire?" Dominic stepped closer, but she backed away. "Lila." "No, you wanted a partner, right?" she said. "Then treat me like one. Tell me what you're not saying. Who do you think did this?" His jaw tightened again. "There's a leak somewhere inside my company. I've suspected it for weeks. But this confirms it. So someone wants this deal to fall apart," she said slowly. He nodded. "If this marriage fails, I lose shareholder confidence. If I lose that, I lose everything." "And what about me?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "What do I lose if this blows up?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Everything," he said, "just like me." The room went still. Neither of them spoke for a while. Finally, Dominic's phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't answer right away. He just stared at the name on the screen. "Who is it?" Lila asked. "My father's lawyer." "I thought your father passed away." "He did," Dominic said. "But his estate didn't, and his lawyer is one of the board members trying to push me out." Lila's voice was cautious. "Do you think he's behind the leak?" "I think he's waiting for the right moment to twist the knife." Dominic answered the call and walked out to the hallway, leaving Lila alone in the silence of the penthouse. She sat back down on the couch, hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, from realization. This wasn't a publicity stunt anymore. This was war, and she was now standing in the middle of a storm she never signed up for. A few minutes later, Dominic returned, looking pale. "What?" she asked. "They're calling an emergency board meeting," he said. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. "To vote you out?" He nodded. "And what about me?" she asked. "Do I go?" "They'll want to see you," he said. "If we walk in divided, they'll smell blood. If we walk in united—" He didn't finish the sentence. Layla stood slowly, crossing her arms. "Then we'd better look like the perfect couple." Dominic met her gaze. "Do you think we can pull it off?" She hesitated, then took a breath. "I think we have no other choice." He nodded once, and for the first time they stood not as strangers, but as allies. Unlikely, unwilling, and forced into a game neither of them controlled. But tomorrow morning they'd face it, together, and somewhere in the shadows of Sterling Corp, someone was watching. The elevator ride to the 45th floor felt like it took hours. Layla stood beside Dominic, both dressed for war. At least, that's what it felt like. She wore a sleek black pencil dress, elegant and understated, paired with soft curls in her hair and the same gold earrings from the night of the announcement. She looked the part now. She knew it. But inside, her heart was thudding so loudly she could hardly think. Dominic, on the other hand, was unreadable. A tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. A silent message. "I'm still in control," but his jaw was locked and the muscle in his cheek kept twitching. She glanced at him. "You okay?" "No," he said simply. "But I will be." The elevator dinged. They stepped into a long glass hallway that led to the boardroom. Inside, 12 chairs surrounded a curved obsidian table. Men and women in suits were already seated, some tapping at tablets, others murmuring quietly. At the head of the table sat Walter Kingsley, gray-haired, cold-eyed, and holding a leather folder, like it was a dagger. Dominic guided Lila to the chair beside his. A pause fell over the room. All eyes turned to her. She gave them a polite smile and folded her hands, pretending her knees weren't trembling under the table. Kingsley cleared his throat. "Well, what a surprise," he said, voice like sandpaper. "The woman of the hour, or should I say, the claws, 14 claws." Lila stiffened. But Dominic spoke first. "We're not here for games, Walter." "No?" Kingsley raised an eyebrow. "Then what are we here for, Dominic? Because from where we're sitting, this company's reputation is on fire, and your fiancée, lovely as she may be, just poured gasoline on it." Dominic didn't blink. "The leak was internal. Someone here broke confidentiality. I suggest we focus on that before casting stones. And yet the only ones who benefited from this circus were you and her." Lila's breath caught. Kingsley leaned forward, voice lowering. "Tell me, Miss Montgomery, how much were you paid for this little performance? What does a fake engagement go for these days?" A few board members chuckled under their breath. Others looked away. Lila felt her cheeks flush, but she kept her eyes steady. "I was paid nothing," she said clearly. "I signed a contract. I followed instructions. I've been harassed, photographed, and humiliated. So if this was all for money, I must be the worst gold digger in history." Dominic smirked, just slightly. Kingsley clapped once, mockingly. Well rehearsed. "She's not acting," Dominic cut in. "And neither am I. We made a strategic decision, one I fully supported." "Then explain it," another board member said. "All of it." Dominic stood slowly. His voice was calm but commanding. "Sterling Corp has never just been about numbers. We built this company on innovation, speed, vision. But lately we've been accused of instability. And let's be honest, you all wanted a reason to push me out. The engagement wasn't about headlines. It was about legacy, stability, continuity. He looked around the table. You want someone dependable? Someone who doesn't take risks? Fine. But don't pretend you didn't benefit from my leadership. Our stock is up 20% this year. I'm not the liability here. This leak is. And the person responsible is sitting at this table. Gasps rippled through the room. Kingsley scoffed. You have no proof. I have enough, Dominic said. Our cybersecurity team traced the leak to an encrypted email account accessed through a company device. Only 12 people have that level of clearance. That includes every single one of you. Lila's eyes widened. He'd already started an investigation? Dominic continued. Until we find out who did it, I suggest we stop throwing around accusations, because when the truth comes out, it won't be pretty. A tense silence followed. Then Kingsley stood. The board will convene privately after this meeting. Until then, the vote to remove Dominic as acting CEO is postponed. He walked toward the door, but paused beside Lila's chair. You're pretty, he said, eyes cold. Smart, too. But pretty doesn't build empires. It breaks them. And just like that, he was gone. The others filed out, murmuring, some stealing glances at Lila like she was a ticking bomb. When the room was finally empty, Lila exhaled and slumped in her chair. I thought he was going to eat me alive, she whispered. Dominic smiled faintly. He tried. You didn't let him? Lila turned to him. Do you really think someone on your board did this? I don't think, Dominic said. I know. Kingsley wants me out. He just didn't expect me to fight back. She studied him. You don't talk much about your father, but he left this company to you, didn't he? He nodded slowly, with strings. Kingsley was his right hand. He's always resented that the kid got the throne. And now he's trying to take it back. Dominic looked at her with something deeper in his eyes now. Not the cold sharpness he wore in public, but something closer to fear or trust. You didn't have to show up today, he said, but you did. Why? Lila hesitated. I'm not here to make your life easier, she said, but I'm not going to let anyone humiliate me either. If we're doing this, then we're doing it right. Together. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once. It wasn't gratitude, it wasn't victory. It was something quieter, something more real. They left the boardroom side by side, but as they stepped into the hallway, Dominic's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, then handed it to her. A message flashed across the screen. You think you're winning, but she has secrets too. Lila's blood ran cold. What is this? She whispered. Dominic was staring at her now, not with affection, with suspicion. Do you, he asked, voice low, have secrets? Do you? Dominic's voice was cold now, controlled. The kind of voice he used when he was in business mode, not the man who'd stood beside her an hour ago, defending her in front of the board. Have secrets? Lila froze. The hallway around them felt suddenly too quiet, too sharp, like even the walls were listening. She stared at the message on his phone. You think you're winning, but she has secrets too. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She wasn't lying. Not exactly, but she hadn't told him everything either. Dominic's eyes narrowed. Lila! She swallowed hard. Yes, but not the kind you think. Then tell me, he said, tone clipped. Now, before someone else does. She took a shaky breath. About 4 years ago, I dropped out of college, she began. Voice low. I was studying journalism. My mom had already left. My dad was gone, and my sister, Emma. She started getting sick. I tried to keep up with classes and jobs and taking care of her, but eventually I couldn't do it all, so I left school. Dominic was silent, his jaw locked. Lila continued. Lila. I worked whatever I could, waitressing, delivery jobs, temp gigs. There were months I couldn't even afford her medication. I made some mistakes. What kind of mistakes? She looked up at him, green eyes flashing with quiet defiance. I borrowed money from someone I shouldn't have, a private lender. No contract, no receipts, just desperate cash. Dominic's brow furrowed. How much? 10,000, she said. It was everything I had. I paid most of it back, but interest kept climbing. I missed a few payments, and then the threats started. His voice dropped. Threats? They found my sister once, followed her home from school. I moved her that night, changed numbers, left the state. That's why I came here, to start over. Dominic was quiet, processing. His eyes had softened now, but only slightly. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't want you to look at me the way you are right now, she said quietly. Like I'm a liability? He didn't respond, and that silence hurt more than any words could. I'm not proud of what I did, she said, her voice breaking slightly. But I did it to protect my sister, just like you're trying to protect your company. We both made choices. He glanced down at the phone again. Who would send this message? Who knows your past? No one here? She said quickly. Not unless someone's digging. Kingsley? Dominic muttered, almost to himself. Or someone working for him. Her heart was racing now. If they found that out about me, what else do they have? Dominic looked at her. Something new sparking in his eyes. Not anger, not suspicion, fear. They're not just trying to ruin me, he said. They're going after you too, to split us, to make us fall apart from the inside. Well, they're doing a great job, she said bitterly. He stepped closer. I'm not walking away, not now. You were ready to, she whispered. The second that message came in, you looked at me like I was the enemy. I don't trust easily, he admitted, but I haven't trusted anyone in a long time, not even myself. She nodded slowly. That's the problem, Dominic. You're building walls so fast, you don't even realize when someone's trying to help. A pause. Then he said something she didn't expect. I believe you. She looked up, surprised. I believe you didn't leak the contract, he said, and I believe you didn't come here to hurt me. But if we're going to survive this, I need all of it, no more hiding. She hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Deal. But that goes both ways. Dominic gave a tired half smile. You're the first person to ever say that to me like they meant it. Before she could reply, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, a grainy security cam image. Dominic's face changed instantly. He handed it to Lila. It was a time-stamped image from just 2 nights ago. The night before the leak, it showed someone inside Sterling Corp's legal offices, hunched over a copy machine, scanning pages. A woman, blonde hair, slim build, face turned just enough to stay out of full view. That's not you, Dominic said, eyes narrowing. But they want me to think it is. Lila leaned closer. That's not my dress, and I don't even have a key card for that floor. I know, but this photo was sent to me anonymously. That means someone wants me to question you. She stood tall now, her voice firm. So who is she? Dominic didn't answer right away. He stared at the image, his brow furrowed. I've seen her before. Where? Then it clicked. He turned to Lila. Her name's Camille. She was my assistant a year ago, until I fired her. Why? She was obsessed, he said, always crossing lines, showing up at places she shouldn't. I gave her a generous severance package, and security escorted her out. She vanished after that. Lila's eyes widened. You think she leaked the contract? If she got inside the building, she had help, Dominic said. She's not smart enough to pull this off alone. And now she's trying to make it look like I did it. Dominic nodded, his expression dark. This isn't just sabotage anymore. It's personal. Layla's stomach churned. If she's still obsessed with you, how far would she go? Dominic met her eyes. As far as she has to. They stared at each other, the tension thick between them, not from distrust now, but from the terrifying realization that someone was pulling strings neither of them could see. Then Lila's phone buzzed. A text, unknown number. She opened it and froze. A photo of Emma, walking out of her hospital, alone. Caption: TikTok, Cinderella? The phone nearly slipped from Lila's hand. She stared at the screen, her pulse pounding so hard she couldn't hear anything but her own heartbeat. The image was clear, too clear. Her sister, Emma, walking alone through the side doors of the hospital. No nurse, no escort, no coat. And that text: TikTok, Cinderella. Lila's throat went dry. "She's gone," she whispered. "Emma, she's not safe." Dominic had crossed the room in seconds. He took the phone from her hands and examined the photo. His entire demeanor changed, from sharp businessman to something colder, more dangerous. "Where was she?" he asked. "North Ridge Memorial," Lila said, already grabbing her coat. "She was transferred there last week. It's supposed to be secure. She's not well enough to leave. She wouldn't just go." Dominic was already on his own phone. "I'm calling security. I'll have my driver meet us downstairs." Lila was pacing now, her hands trembling. "Who would do this? Why? She's a child. She's never hurt anyone." "Because they know it'll break you," Dominic said. "That's the play. They couldn't get to me, so now they're using you to tear everything down. But I'm not even important to them." "You are to me." She froze. Dominic didn't look up from his phone. His voice was even, controlled, but the words cut deeper than anything else he'd said. "You're important to me," he repeated. "That's why this is happening. Someone wants to drive a wedge between us. And they're not playing fair." A horn blared from the street below. Dominic grabbed his coat and opened the door. "Let's go." They rode in silence, the city blurring past them in streaks of neon and rain-slick pavement. Lila clutched her phone like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. She kept refreshing her messages. Nothing. No more texts, no calls. Just the one photo. Her worst nightmare, framed like a threat. "I should have told you everything earlier," she said suddenly. "About the loan, the men who followed us, all of it." Dominic glanced at her. "You did what you had to do. But now she's in danger." "She's going to be fine," he said. "I promise." "You can't promise that." "I can." "Because I won't stop until we find her." There was something in his voice, a quiet force that made her believe him, even when she didn't want to. She stared at him for a long second. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "This isn't your fight." He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, he said, "It became my fight the moment I dragged you into mine." The car pulled up to the hospital. Lila was out before the driver even opened the door. She ran through the sliding glass entrance, straight to the front desk. Dominic followed closely behind. "My sister," Lila said, breathless. "Emma Montgomery. She was in room 312. I need to know if she's still here." The nurse tapped quickly at her keyboard, then frowned. "She checked out earlier today?" "No," Lila said, shaking her head. "She couldn't have. She's too sick. She's on IV meds. She wouldn't just walk away." "She wasn't alone," the nurse added. "She left with a woman, blonde, early 30s, said she was a family member." Dominic's eyes locked with Lila's. "Camille," he said. Layla turned back to the nurse. "Did she show ID? Did anyone question it?" "She had the right passcode for the file. I'm sorry." Dominic was already pulling out his phone again. "Get me security footage from this floor in the parking lot. Now." The nurse blinked. "Sir, I can't give—" He stepped forward. "This girl is underage. She's sick, and she's missing. You're either going to help me find her, or I'm going to bury this hospital in legal firepower before the night is over. Your choice." The nurse blinked twice, then nodded and picked up the phone. Layla stepped back, overwhelmed. Her mind was spinning. 1,000 thoughts at once. Emma could be anywhere, alone, afraid, or worse. Not alone. Dominic turned to her, his voice lower now. "We'll find her." Lila shook her head, tears rising to her eyes. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to play this game." "You don't have to," he said. "You just have to hold on." And for the first time, she let him. Her hand reached for his, not for show, not for a camera, not because the contract told her to, because she needed something real. Security brought over the footage 20 minutes later. They gathered in a small office, the screen flickering. There she was, Emma, in a hoodie too big for her, shuffling beside a woman in a long beige coat, blonde, slender, smiling like it was all fine. Camille. Dominic leaned forward. Freeze. Zoom in. The image sharpened slightly. Camille's hand was resting on Emma's shoulder, her smile too wide, her eyes cold. "I know that look," Dominic said, jaw tightening. "She's trying to look like a friend, but she's hunting." "Where would she take her?" Layla asked. "I don't know," he said, "but I know how to find out." He stood and pulled out his phone. "Who are you calling?" she asked. "My head of security. He tracks license plates. Camille's not that smart. She'll make a mistake." "And if she doesn't?" Dominic turned back to her, his eyes full of something deeper now, fierce, protective, raw. "Then I'll make her regret ever touching your sister." The call connected, and Dominic began barking instructions, his entire body tight, with urgency. But Lila barely heard him, because her phone buzzed again. Another text, this time a video. She opened it. Emma, tied to a chair, blinking slowly. Behind her, Camille's voice whispered, sweet and cruel, "Let's see how far your billionaire will go to protect the girl who sold herself." Lila's breath caught in her throat. She crouched lower behind the broken wall, pressing her hand to her mouth to stop any sound from escaping. Camille's voice still echoed in her ear, smug, venomous. "I want Lila. Bring her to me, or your perfect little world burns." Dominic didn't respond right away. On the other end of the line, Lila could hear the silence stretching between them, thick with calculation, tension, and something deeper. "Lila's not part of this," he said finally. "Let Emma go." "She's everything," Camille hissed. "The way you look at her, like she matters, like I never did. She walked in with nothing, and suddenly she's your world." Lila felt cold all over. Camille didn't want money or revenge. She wanted to be chosen. "I'll give you 10 seconds, Camille continued, her voice sing-song now. 10, 9. Dominic's voice came through the earpiece, low and quick. "Lila, move, now." Lila didn't hesitate. She crept through the darkness, past a hallway with exposed wood beams and rotting wallpaper. The house smelled of mildew and old smoke, but through the broken paneling she could see light up ahead, and voices. Camille was still counting. 5, 4. Lila reached the edge of the doorframe. Carefully she peeked in. The room was large, once a ballroom maybe. Dust-coated mirrors lined the walls. In the center, Emma sat tied to a chair, her head slumped forward but breathing. Her wrists were bound but not bleeding. Still alive. Camille stood just a few feet away, facing Dominic, who stood calmly, hands in his pockets, like he was in a boardroom and not a hostage situation. "Don't be stupid," he said. "You're outnumbered. You're surrounded." Camille smiled. "Oh, I know. But see, I'm not trying to escape." She stepped closer. "I don't care what happens after this. I just want her to feel what I felt. Used. Replaced. Worthless." Dominic took a slow step forward. "You weren't worthless, Camille. You were just lost." Her smile vanished. "And what is she then?" "Found?" she snapped. Lila was still hidden, crouched behind the broken frame. She could see Dominic's face now, tight with tension, but calm, still protecting her with silence. She tapped her earpiece, whispered, "I have eyes on Emma." Dominic heard. His gaze flickered just slightly. "Then do it," he said aloud, as if speaking to Camille. "Take me instead. Let them go." Lila's heart stopped. "No," she breathed. "Dominic, don't." Camille tilted her head. "Oh? The great Dominic Sterling offering himself up like a sacrifice? How noble." "I'm serious," he said. "You want revenge?" "You want attention? You'll get more if you take me. My face is worth headlines. Hers isn't." Lila flinched. It was a ploy. She knew that. He didn't mean it that way. But it still stung. Camille laughed. "You think I care about headlines? I don't want your face, Dominic. I want your regret. and I want her to know what it feels like to lose everything." She turned, pointing the gun she'd hidden beneath her coat, straight at Emma. Lila didn't think. She burst through the door. "Don't touch her!" Camille froze. Dominic's eyes widened. "Lila!" "I'm here," she said, stepping into the light. "You wanted me. You got me. Let my sister go." Camille smiled slowly. Gun still raised. And there she is, the girl who signs contracts without reading them. Lila moved forward, hands raised. "You win, okay? I'll stay. Do whatever you want. Just let her go." "No," Dominic said sharply. "Lila, don't—" "She's my sister," Lila snapped, her voice breaking. Camille's smile faltered. "Just a little." "Funny," she muttered. "You're braver than I thought. I expected you to run." Lila took another step forward. "You don't know me." "Don't I?" Camille asked, tilting her head. "I know what desperation looks like. I saw it every day I worked for him. I was you once, but I wasn't lucky. I didn't get the part. I didn't get the ring. I got a severance check and security guards." "I didn't ask for any of this," Lila said. "But you stayed," Camille said. "You chose to stay." Lila didn't move. "Let Emma go. Please." A long pause. Then Camille looked at Dominic. "Trade?" "No," Dominic said firmly. "Dominic, let both of them go and I'll stay." Lila turned to him. "You're not making that deal." "Neither are you." Camille rolled her eyes. "You two are exhausting." And then she fired. Lila screamed. But the bullet hit the floor and just inches from Emma's chair. A warning, not a kill shot. Dominic lunged forward. In the chaos, Lila dashed to Emma, fumbling with the rope. Her fingers were shaking so badly she could barely untie the knots. Camille turned the gun on Dominic, but he was faster. He tackled her to the ground, sending the weapon skidding across the dusty floor. She screamed, clawing at his face. But he didn't let go. Lila freed Emma's hands, pulled her into a hug. Her sister was sobbing now, clutching her like a child. "It's okay," Lila whispered. "I've got you. I've got you." Security stormed in seconds later, sweeping the room and pinning Camille to the ground. Her screams echoed against the walls like a siren. Rage, despair, obsession, everything twisted into one final howl. Then, silence. It was over. Dominic was bleeding, a cut along his cheekbone, but he didn't flinch. He crossed the room, knelt beside Lila and Emma. "You're safe," he said softly. Lila nodded, eyes full of tears. Then Emma whispered, "He protected me." Lila looked up at Dominic. "He protected both of us." They held each other there. No contracts, no cameras, no pretending, just the three of them, broken and alive. Outside, the lights of emergency vehicles painted the night in flashes of red and blue, but inside, something else had started to bloom, something fragile and real. Love, maybe, or the beginning of it. And just as the medics arrived to take Emma, Lila leaned in close to Dominic and whispered, "You're not alone anymore." But neither of them knew that this night wasn't the end of the fallout. It was just the beginning, because somewhere back in the city, a new message was already being written. And this time, it wouldn't come from Camille. 3 days passed. Lila sat beside her sister's hospital bed, her hand wrapped gently around Emma's. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the monitor beside them blinked with a soft, steady rhythm, the most beautiful sound in the world. Emma was safe, healing, sleeping, but Lila hadn't slept. Not really. Everything that happened at the estate still played like a movie in her head. The gunshot, the look on Camille's face, Dominic's body shielding hers like instinct. She couldn't stop replaying it, not because of the fear, but because of what it meant. No contract could explain the way he'd looked at her, or the way his voice broke when he told her she mattered, that he cared. But what happened next? She didn't know. Not yet. All she knew was that after the medics took Emma and the police took Camille, Dominic had stayed beside her, quietly, without needing to be asked. He didn't leave her side until morning, and then he was gone. Layla had called, texted, but no response. Part of her wanted to believe he was just giving her space, that he was dealing with his own version of the aftermath, but another part, the one that had been burned before, whispered something darker. Maybe this was the end. Maybe you were just a moment in his story. The door creaked open behind her. She turned quickly, heart pounding. But it wasn't Dominic. It was his head of security, a man named Marcus, always in black, always calm. He gave her a slight nod. "Miss Montgomery, Dominic sent me to check on you and your sister." Lila stood slowly. "Where is he?" Marcus hesitated. "He's handling something." "Handling what?" The man looked uncomfortable. "There's been another leak." Lila's blood went cold. "Another leak?" she echoed. "Eddie, about us?" "No," he said. "About him." He handed her a tablet. She tapped the screen and froze. It was a video. Grainy surveillance footage. Dominic, in his office, late at night, arguing with someone familiar, Walter Kingsley. Lila watched in silence as the footage played out, the two men standing inches apart. Dominic furious, Kingsley smug. There was no sound, but the body language said everything. "You were right," Marcus said. "Camille was the storm they wanted us to chase." While they opened the back door. "Do you think Camille was working for him?" Layla asked. Marcus shook his head. "No, she acted on her own. But while we were all focused on her, Kingsley made his real move." Lila looked up, eyes wide. "A distraction from what?" Marcus's voice was grim. "While you were trying to save your sister, Kingsley made his move." Her throat tightened. "What did he do?" "He's been quietly collecting votes, paying people off, falsifying reports, and today he filed a motion to remove Dominic permanently as CEO. He's calling an emergency vote in 48 hours. Lila blinked. "But Dominic saved this company. He's Sterling Corp." Marcus nodded. "And Kingsley's trying to erase him from it. Does Dominic know?" "He does now," Marcus said, "and he's doing what he always does, which is trying to fix everything by himself." Leila looked down at Emma. She squeezed her sister's hand gently. Then she turned back to Marcus. "Take me to him." Dominic stood alone in his office. The city glowed behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows casting long shadows across the room. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly disheveled. There were folders everywhere, spreadsheets. Vote counts, legal memos. He didn't hear the door open. "You're doing it again," Lila said. He turned, startled. "What?" "Fighting alone." Dominic's expression softened the moment he saw her. He walked over but didn't say anything at first. "You shouldn't be here," he said gently. "I should," she replied. "Because you're not the only one with something to fight for." He looked down, then said, "Kingsley played me. While I was distracted with Camille, he undermined everything. The board vote is in 2 days. If he wins, it's over. I lose control of the company. My father's legacy. Everything." Lila stepped closer. "What if he's underestimating you?" Dominic gave a tired smile. "He's not. He knows I don't have the votes. He bought them." "Then buy them back," she said simply. He blinked. "What?" "You're Dominic Sterling. You built an empire out of nothing but pressure and chaos. You don't back down now." He studied her. "I'm not sure there's anything left to fight for." She took his hand. "There is," she whispered, "because if he wins, he doesn't just take your company. He takes us, everything we built." He looked at her. Something shifted behind his eyes. "Was it real for you?" he asked. Lila didn't flinch. "Every second." Dominic let out a slow breath, then pulled her into him, not like a performance, but like a man holding on to the one thing that still made sense in a world that was unraveling. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered into her hair. "You won't," she replied. When they pulled apart, there was something new in his eyes. Resolve. "You said we built something," he said. "Then help me protect it." Lila smiled. "Tell me what you need." Over the next 24 hours, they worked nonstop. Lila made calls to investors, board members, anyone who would listen. Dominic prepared financials, projected numbers, strategic plans. He spoke from the heart now, not from a script. And slowly, things began to shift. One by one, votes began to turn, loyalty returned, hope rose. But just as the tide began to turn, an envelope arrived, unmarked, no return address. Inside it, a single photograph. Lila, in a hotel hallway, from years ago, next to a man in a suit. And scribbled across the bottom, she was selling more than her name. Lila stared at the photo in her trembling hands, the hallway, the man in the suit. Her face turned slightly away, caught in a moment she'd long buried, a moment that wasn't what it looked like but didn't matter, not to those who wanted it to matter. And those words written across the bottom in red ink. She was selling more than her name. Her stomach turned. It wasn't true, but it didn't need to be. In the wrong hands, this photo was a weapon, and whoever sent it knew exactly what they were doing. Dominic stepped into the room a second later, holding a printed speech, the one he'd give at the emergency board meeting in just under an hour, the same speech that could save everything. He stopped when he saw her face. "What is it?" he asked, voice quiet. She held out the photo without a word. He took it, read the words, studied the image, and for a moment the silence between them hurt more than anything he could have said. Then finally, softly, he spoke. "Who is this man?" Lila sat down, her voice barely a whisper. "His name is Grant. He worked in event management. He offered me a place to stay for a few nights, and when Emma and I had nowhere else to go. He was kind. Nothing ever happened. But one night, he had too much to drink. He followed me to my room. I turned him away. He got angry. He took a picture before I could close the door." Dominic's hands tightened around the edges of the photo. "You never told me," he said. "I didn't want to bring it here," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't want that part of my life to touch this one." "It didn't," Dominic said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong." She looked at him. "But it looks like I did." "And you think I care about appearances?" She hesitated. "Lila," he said, kneeling in front of her now, taking her hands, "you've spent your whole life protecting the people you love, carrying more weight than anyone should. You didn't come into my life to destroy it. You saved it." She let out a soft sob and fell into him, arms wrapping around his shoulders. "They're going to use it against you. They're going to say, I'm a liar, that I was using you from the start." "Then let them talk," he said, "because I know the truth. And if they don't want a CEO who stands beside the woman he loves, then I don't want to be their CEO." She pulled back, eyes wide. Dominic looked at her, really looked, and said, "I love you, Lila." It hit her like air after drowning, a truth she wasn't expecting, but one she'd needed. She laughed through her tears. "I love you too." He kissed her, slow and real, no cameras, no contracts, just the two of them, breathing the same fear, the same hope, and finally the same future. Then he stood. "We have a board to face." The room was full. The entire Sterling board had gathered, tension thick in the air. At the center, Walter Kingsley stood tall, smiling as if the game was already over. "I think we've all seen enough," Kingsley said, tapping a file on the desk. "Photos, records, whispers of scandal. The CEO's fake engagement turned into a full-blown circus." Dominic entered with Lila beside him, her shoulders squared. Kingsley's smile widened. "You know what I love most about people like you," Kingsley said. "You always think love is enough. But this is business, Dominic, and in business, love gets you crushed." Dominic stepped forward, calm and unapologetic. "You're right," he said. "This started as business, but it didn't end that way." He turned to the board. "Let me be clear. I miscalculated. I made mistakes. But the person standing beside me is not one of them." He took Lila's hand. "You've seen photos, whispers, distractions, But what you haven't seen is the truth. This company grew under pressure, under loss. I know that pressure. I've lived in it since the day my father handed me the keys and told me I'd never be good enough." The room went still. Dominic continued, "I built this company with everything I had, not to prove him wrong, but to prove to myself that I was more than a last name. And this woman—" He turned to Lila again. "She reminded me that I was." He paused. "So, if this board wants someone who hides behind numbers and PR spins, vote me out. But if you want a leader who stands in the fire, who protects what matters, who doesn't walk away when it's inconvenient, then you know where I stand." Silence. Then one by one members looked at each other. The head of investor relations, once leaning toward Kingsley, raised her hand. "I vote to retain Dominic Sterling as CEO." Another hand, then another. Kingsley's smile cracked. "No," he said, "this isn't about feelings." "Feelings built this company," someone else said. "We're voting." In the end, the vote wasn't close. Dominic remained CEO. Kingsley left the room without another word, his empire of sabotage collapsing behind him. Later that night, Leela stood beside Dominic on the rooftop of Sterling Tower. Emma was safe. The contract was voided, and the headlines had changed. Dominic Sterling keeps control and finds love in the process. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "So," she said, smiling, "what happens now?" He looked up at the stars. "Now?" He turned her gently to face him. "Now, we write our own contract. No lawyers, no loopholes," she laughed. "Just you and me, just us." He reached into his pocket, not for a ring, but for a folded piece of paper, a handwritten note. He opened it and read aloud, his voice steady but warm. "This is our new contract. Clause 1, no more pretending. Clause 2, we fight side by side. Clause 3, we choose each other every day, freely." He smiled and handed it to her. "No loopholes, no lawyers, just us." Lila laughed through misty eyes. "Now that's a contract I'll gladly sign." Then she kissed him, soft, certain, real. And as the wind rustled through the city below, two broken hearts finally found their home, not in wealth or power, but in each other. 1 year later, the sun was just beginning to set, casting golden light through the tall glass windows of the Emma Grace Children's Center. It stood on the east side of the city, a place once forgotten, now filled with color, laughter, and life. What used to be a crumbling medical wing was now a vibrant haven for children battling illnesses their families could barely afford to face. And right in the center of it all was Lila. She walked slowly through the main hall, past walls covered with art drawn by the patients. Crayon hearts, stick figure families, a smiling sun with the words, "Thank you, Miss Lila," scribbled beneath it in shaky handwriting. Her heels clicked softly on the polished floor, but her steps weren't rushed. Not anymore. Life had changed. She had changed. She paused in front of a small plaque by the entrance of the main playroom. It read, "The Emma Grace Foundation in honor of second chances." Her eyes welled, not from grief this time, from gratitude, from the impossible fact that her little sister's name now lived on a wall meant for healing, not pain. A quiet laugh pulled her attention. Emma, now 16, strong and glowing with energy, was sitting on the floor with two younger kids, helping them build a cardboard spaceship. Her hair had grown back fully. Her cheeks had color again. Her laughter didn't carry pain anymore. She was okay. She was more than okay. A warm hand touched Lila's back. She turned and didn't need to look. She knew it was him, Dominic Sterling, but not the Dominic the world had met in boardrooms and press conferences. This Dominic wore no suit today, just a light gray sweater, sleeves pushed up to his forearms, and dark jeans. Casual, calm, open. The armor was gone. "You okay?" he asked softly. Lila nodded. "Yeah, just remembering." He followed her gaze to Emma, then wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "It's crazy," he said, "what a year can do." "It doesn't feel like a year," she replied. "It feels like another life." And in a way, it was. Since Kingsley's fall from power, after the board reinstated Dominic and launched a full investigation, the company had entered a new era. Dominic had stayed on as CEO for 6 more months. Enough to stabilize, rebrand, and name a successor he believed in, not one chosen by legacy or fear. Then he walked away, not in disgrace, not under pressure, but on his terms. And the first thing he did, he helped Lila build this center. They sold the penthouse, left the skyline behind, moved to a quieter neighborhood where the air didn't taste like ambition. And mornings came without calendars. He still had money, influence, power. But what he had now, with her, was something even rarer: peace. "I was thinking," he said, pulling her out of her thoughts, "we should finally take that trip." She looked up at him. "What trip?" "The one we always talk about." "Italy. No business, no interviews, no phones. Just us," she smiled. "You're serious?" "I've never been more serious about anything." She turned fully toward him now, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I like this version of you," she teased. "No suits, no contracts, just bold travel plans and spontaneous affection." He smirked. "You always bring out the dangerous side of me." She kissed him once, slow and meaningful. "Promise me we'll never go back to who we were before." "I promise." They stood there for a while, surrounded by laughter, by hope, by the life they'd rebuilt, with scarred but steady hands. Then Emma ran. Cheeks flushed and eyes sparkling. "Are you two being gross again?" she asked with a grin. Dominic laughed. "Depends who you ask." "I asked the kids," she said, crossing her arms. "They said you're setting a terrible example." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Says the girl who just launched a cardboard rocket at the ceiling. Creative innovation," Emma replied. "You should know all about that, Mr. Sterling." Dominic bowed slightly. "Touché?" Emma rolled her eyes but smiled, hugging Lila tightly. "Thank you. For this place. For everything." Lila brushed a hand through her sister's hair. "You're the reason it exists. We just followed your light." Emma looked between them. "So, are you guys ever going to get married, or are we just doing this fake engagement thing forever?" Dominic blinked. "Wow, no mercy." "I'm 16 now," Emma said. "I'm allowed to meddle." Lila laughed. "Let's see if we survive the Italy trip first." Dominic squeezed her hand. "One step at a time." They watched Emma head back to the playroom. Her laughter echoed down the hall, and just like that, Lila exhaled. Fully. There was no weight left on her chest, no masks to wear, no lies to manage, only love, only healing, only forward. That night, as the sun disappeared behind the city skyline, Lila sat on the rooftop garden of their quiet home, legs curled beneath her, a warm mug in hand. Dominic sat beside her with a book he wasn't reading, his focus fully on her. She looked at him. "Do you think we would have found each other if I hadn't signed that contract?" He thought for a moment. "No," he said. "But I think life would have found a way to bring you to me, sooner or later." She smiled. "Why?" He took her hand. "Because you're the one thing I didn't know I needed, until it was almost too late." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. The stars came out. The city went quiet. And for the first time in a long, long time, everything felt exactly as it should be, the end. Sometimes the biggest mistakes lead you exactly where you were meant to be. Now it's your turn. Have you ever ended up somewhere beautiful because of a choice you thought was a mistake? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this story touched your heart in any way, leave a like, subscribe for more stories like this, and rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments. I'd love to know how it made you feel. You matter. Your voice matters, and your presence here means more than you know. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.